One, there is a jug of it sitting in your laundry room right now. Another one is sitting on a shelf in your garage. A third ingredient is in a box in your pantry combined. They cost less than $4. And together they do something that pool stores sell as a $40 Cloud Clear specialty formula in a bottle with a picture of crystal blue water on the front and a vague list of proprietary flocculating agents on the back. Pool professionals have known about this combination for decades, not because it is a secret formula whispered between old-timers at the supply warehouse. 1. Because the chemistry is simple, the ingredients are common, and the only thing standing between you and clear water has been a label designed to make you think you needed something more complicated than you actually do. This video is about that mix, what it is, why it clears cloudy water when nothing else seems to work, the exact ratios for a residential pool, and why the pool store version of this exact process costs 10 to 15 times what the homemade version costs. 1. By the end of this video, you will know how to take a swamp-colored hazy, I don't even want to look at this pool situation, and turn it into swimmable water within 24 to 48 hours using ingredients that are already in your house. 90% of cloudy pool complaints are not actually chlorine problems. They are filtration and particle size problems, and once you understand that distinction, the fix stops being mysterious. Talk to enough pool techs and a pattern shows up immediately. Homeowners see cloudy water and reach for more chlorine. Sometimes that helps. 1. Most of the time, it does almost nothing, because cloudiness is rarely a sanitizer problem on its own. Cloudiness is a suspended particle problem. The particles causing the haze, fine dust, pollen, sunscreen residue, dead algae cells, calcium dust, organic debris broken down by chlorine are small enough to pass straight through a standard sand or cartridge filter without ever getting caught. Your filter is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. 1. The problem is that the particles making your water look like skim milk are simply too small for the filter media to grab on their own. A sand filter typically catches particles down to about 20 to 40 microns. The particles causing persistent cloudiness are frequently in the 1 to 10 micron range. They are, in a very literal sense, slipping through the gaps. This is why pool owners get stuck in a loop. Shock the pool, run the filter for 2 days. Water is still hazy, add more chlorine, still hazy, buy the pool store's specialty clarifier, water clears up a little cloud, comes back a week later. 1. The loop exists because chlorine was never the actual lever for this specific problem. The lever is particle size. You either need to shrink the filter's effective pore size, or you need to make the particles themselves bigger so the existing filter can catch them. That second option is called flocculation, and it is exactly what this mix does. The core of this system is calcium chloride, alongside baking soda, and, in the more stubborn cases, a small amount of aluminum sulfate, better known by its common name, alum. All three are available in ordinary stores for a few dollars. And all three have been used by pool professionals as a manual clarifying system since long before pool clarifier bottles existed on store shelves. Alum works through a process called coagulation. When added to pool water in the correct dose, it reacts with the water and forms a sticky web-like structure that the tiny suspended particles physically adhere to. As this structure forms, it grows heavier than the particles alone and begins to settle toward the bottom of the pool, dragging the haze-causing debris down with it. What was floating and scattering light throughout the water column collects instead in a layer on the pool floor, where it can be vacuumed out directly to waste, bypassing the filter altogether. This is the same basic principle municipal water treatment plants use to clarify drinking water before it ever reaches a filter. It is not a specialty pool chemical. It is one of the oldest, most well-understood water treatment techniques that exists, sold back to pool owners in a smaller container with a bigger price tag. Baking soda's role here is different and just as important. Alum performs best in a fairly narrow pH and alkalinity range. If your total alkalinity is too low when you add alum, the coagulation reaction is weak and inconsistent, and you end up with a partial cloud instead of a clean settle. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, raises total alkalinity into the range where the alum treatment actually works the way it is supposed to. Skipping this step is the single most common reason people say they tried the alum trick and it didn't work. Pool store clarifier products fall into a few categories, and understanding the categories explains the pricing. 1. The cheapest, weakest category is polymer-based clarifier, sold in small bottles for $15 to $25. These work by a mild electrostatic process that encourages tiny particles to clump just enough for your existing filter to catch them, rather than making them heavy enough to sink. They are gentler, slower, and considerably less effective on genuinely severe cloudiness. They also need to be dosed repeatedly, which means repeated purchases. The stronger category is labeled Super Clarifier or Pool Flock, and this is where the real markup lives. Read the active ingredient on these bottles, and it is, in the overwhelming majority of cases, some form of aluminum sulfate or a closely related aluminum-based coagulant, the same category of compound as plain alum. The pool store version costs $20 to $35 for a quart. Plain aluminum sulfate, sold as alum, is available in the canning and pickling section of most grocery stores or in bulk from garden and agricultural suppliers for a small fraction of that price per equivalent dose. 1. The chemistry doing the actual work. The coagulation reaction that drags particles to the pool floor is the same reaction whether you bought the compound in a pool store bottle with a picture of clear water on it or in a small jar in the spice aisle labeled for pickling. The pool store is not selling you a better reaction. It is selling you the same reaction in a container that costs more because it is marketed as a pool-specific solution to a pool-specific problem, when the compound itself was never pool-specific at all. The complete mix, step by step, this is the section to save. 1. Every ratio below is calculated for a standard 10,000-gallon residential pool. Scale proportionally for your own pool size, and always confirm your filter type before starting, since the process differs slightly for sand versus cartridge versus DE filters. Step 1. Check and correct total alkalinity first before adding anything else. Test total alkalinity. You want it in the 80 to 120 parts per million range before the alum treatment goes in. 1. If it is low, add baking soda in small increments, roughly 1.5 pounds per 10,000 gallons, raises alkalinity by about 10 parts per million. Retesting between additions until you are in range. This step is not optional. Skipping it is the #1 reason people report a partial or failed clarifying attempt. Step 2. Turn the filter off. This is the step that surprises people, because everything else in pool care tells you to run the pump. 1. For this specific treatment, you want the water completely still so the flocculated particles can settle to the floor undisturbed rather than getting pulled back into circulation. Shut the pump down completely for the duration of the treatment. Step 3. Pre-dissolve the alum. For a 10,000-gallon pool with moderate to severe cloudiness, dissolve approximately 1 to 1.5 pounds of alum in a 5-gallon bucket of warm water, stirring until fully dissolved. 1. Never add alum directly to the pool in dry or concentrated form, since uneven distribution causes uneven clumping and patchy results, rather than an even settle across the entire pool floor. Step 4. Distribute evenly across the surface. Walk the perimeter of the pool slowly, pouring the dissolved alum solution across the surface in a broad, even pattern rather than dumping it in one spot. Even distribution is what produces an even settle. A concentrated pour in one corner produces a concentrated pile in that corner and leaves the rest of the pool undertreated. 1. Step 5. Leave it completely still for 24 hours. No swimming, no filter, no vacuum, no disturbance of the water. This is the period where the flocculated mass forms and sinks. You will typically see visible improvement within 6 to 12 hours, with the water going from hazy to noticeably clearer as the particles collect on the pool floor in a soft, snow-like layer. Step 6. Vacuum to waste, not through the filter. 1. After the settling period. The debris layer on the pool floor needs to be removed directly, bypassing the filter system entirely, using the waste or backwash setting on your multiport valve if you have one. Vacuuming this layer through the normal filter setting simply pushes all those newly collected particles straight back through the filter and can clog a cartridge or overload a sand bed almost instantly. Vacuum slowly in slow, overlapping passes, since this layer is fine and easily stirred back into suspension if you move too quickly. Step 7. Refill and rebalance. 1. Vacuuming to waste removes water along with the debris, so top off the pool afterward and retest your full chemistry, chlorine, pH, alkalinity, before resuming normal swimming and filtration. For pools with cartridge filters rather than a multiport valve, the process is nearly identical, but the vacuum to waste step requires either a dedicated waste line if your plumbing has one, or a separate submersible pump used specifically to remove the settled debris without pulling it through the cartridge. It is worth being direct about the cases where this treatment is not the right tool, because using flocculation on the wrong kind of cloudy water wastes time and alum for no result. If your cloudiness is accompanied by a strong chlorine smell, low free chlorine on a test kit, and the water has a slight yellow-green or dull tint rather than a milky white haze, you are very likely dealing with early algae growth or heavy combined chlorine, not a particle size problem. In that case, a proper shock treatment using plain unscented bleach, dosed to breakpoint chlorination levels, addresses the underlying cause first. Attempting to flocculate algae-heavy water without addressing chlorine levels first tends to produce disappointing partial results, since you're trying to settle out organic material that is still actively growing rather than dead debris that simply needs to be removed. 1A reasonable sequence for genuinely severe cloudy water is correct chlorine and shock if algae is present and let that process run its course over a day or two, then move to the alkalinity check and alum treatment described above. Once chlorine and pH are in a stable range, trying to do everything simultaneously tends to produce confusing results because you cannot tell which step is responsible for which improvement. This channel draws honest lines, and this system has real limits that are worth stating plainly. 1. This mix does not replace regular filtration and does not eliminate the need for a properly sized, properly maintained filter system. It solves an acute cloudiness problem. It is not a substitute for running your filter the recommended hours per day, backwashing or cleaning cartridges on schedule, or keeping your pump in good working order. A pool with a genuinely undersized or failing filter system will simply cloud up again on a predictable schedule, no matter how many times you run this treatment, because the underlying capacity problem was never addressed. 1. This mix does not replace proper sanitizer levels. Clearing suspended particles does nothing to address a chlorine deficiency, and clear-looking water with inadequate sanitizer is not safe water. Chlorine and clarity are two different variables, and both need to be correct. This mix is not the fastest option for a pool that has gone fully green with heavy algae bloom. That situation calls for a proper slam process using calcium hypochlorite or bleach at breakpoint levels first. Flocculation is for clearing haze and fine particulate matter, not for killing an active algae population. And if your cloudiness persists after a correctly executed alkalinity correction, alum treatment, and vacuum to waste cycle, that is a signal worth taking seriously rather than repeating the treatment blindly. Persistent cloudiness after a properly done flock treatment often points to a filter media problem, sand that needs replacing, a cartridge that is beyond cleaning and needs swapping, or a DE grid that has torn, and no amount of additional alum fixes a filter that has reached the end of its functional life. 1 grocery store or pharmacy. Baking soda in bulk for the alkalinity correction step, grocery store canning and pickling aisle, or garden supply store. Aluminum sulfate, sold as alum in 1 to 2 pound containers depending on your pool size and how severe the cloudiness is. Already on hand if you followed the earlier bleach substitution system, plain unscented bleach for chlorine correction if algae is present alongside the cloudiness. That is the entire list for this specific treatment. 1 trip, 2 ingredients, a bucket, and 24 hours of patience. 1 every ingredient in this system was doing something else before it ever touched a swimming pool. Alum has been used in municipal water treatment for well over a century, clarifying drinking water at a scale far larger than any residential pool. Baking soda was baking soda long before it had a role in pool alkalinity. Neither compound was invented for this purpose, discovered by a pool chemical company, or protected by anything resembling proprietary technology. 1. They were repackaged, relabeled with pool-specific instructions, and priced at a rate that reflects the specialty market they were placed into rather than the actual cost or complexity of the compound itself. The pool professional who has been running this exact sequence on cloudy accounts for years did not stumble onto a trade secret. They read a water treatment textbook, or they learned it from someone who did, and they applied a century-old clarification principle to a swimming pool instead of a municipal reservoir. That is the entire advantage, not proprietary chemistry, not access to something you cannot buy. A willingness to ask what the compound actually is instead of accepting what the label says it is for. You now have this same sequence. The next time you stand at the edge of a hazy, milky pool wondering whether to spend $40 on a bottle labeled Super Clarifier, You will know what is actually inside that bottle, what it costs somewhere else, and how to use the plain version yourself with better control over the dose than the bottle's instructions ever gave you. 1. Here's an additional 1,200 words to extend the script written directly in chat in the same voice meant to slot in before the complete shopping list section. Before any of this works reliably, there is a habit that separates the owner who gets a clean pool on the first try from the owner who spends an entire weekend adding alum and baking soda in the wrong order, wondering why the water still looks like dishwater. Test before you treat. Not a quick glance at a test strip that has been sitting in a hot garage for 2 years losing its accuracy. 1A real reading. Ideally with a liquid drop-based kit of total alkalinity, pH, and free chlorine. Taken the same day you plan to run the treatment. Water chemistry shifts with heat, rain, bather load, and evaporation, sometimes by a meaningful amount in a single week. Treating based on last month's numbers is treating blind. This matters more for this specific system than for almost any other pool maintenance task, because alum's effectiveness is directly tied to the alkalinity window it needs to react properly. One guess wrong on alkalinity. Skip the correction step or assume it was fine last time and the alum treatment either underperforms or fails outright. The owner who develops the habit of testing first every time is the owner who gets a predictable result every time. The owner who skips this step is the one who ends up in the comments asking why the trick didn't work for them when the trick worked exactly as expected. The water just was not in the condition the trick requires. A $5 test kit and 2 minutes of your time is the actual foundation underneath every dose in this video. Everything else is downstream of getting that reading right first. Not every cloudy pool clears in a single 24-hour cycle, and it is worth understanding why before you assume the treatment has failed. Severity matters. A pool that has been cloudy for 3 days after a single heavy rain event is a fundamentally different situation than a pool that has been chronically hazy for 3 weeks straight through repeated partial treatments, inconsistent filter runtime, and fluctuating chemistry. The first situation usually clears in one pass. 1. The second situation often has a much higher total particle load suspended in the water, sometimes compounded by a filter that has been struggling to keep up for weeks and is itself partially clogged with the same fine material causing the cloudiness in the first place. For pools in that second category, a single alum dose settles what it can settle, and the water looks noticeably better, but a second haze reappears within a day or two as the water continues to shed particles that a struggling filter never fully caught in the earlier attempt. This is not a sign the system failed. It is a sign the pool needed 2 cycles instead of 1, and it is far more common in neglected pools than in pools that get treated early, the moment cloudiness first appears. The practical response is straightforward. After the first vacuum to waste cycle, run the filter normally for 24 to 48 hours, retest alkalinity, and repeat the alum treatment at half the original dose if any haze remains. A second, lighter dose finishes the job on stubborn cases without overtreating water that is already most of the way clear. Trying to solve a 3-week neglect problem with a single treatment and then concluding the method does not work is the single most common source of frustration reported by owners trying this for the first time. Here is a detail that rarely makes it into pool store literature, for reasons that are not hard to guess. A pool that clouds up repeatedly, cycle after cycle, month after month, despite reasonable chemistry, is very often telling you something about the filter itself, rather than the water. Sand filters lose their effective grain sharpness over years of service, and sand that has been in place for 5 to 7 years frequently needs replacing even though it looks superficially like ordinary sand. Cartridge filters accumulate oils, sunscreen residue, and fine debris in their pleats in a way that a simple hose rinse never fully removes, gradually reducing their effective filtration down to a fraction of their rated capacity. Running an alum treatment on a pool with degraded filter media absolutely still works for that specific cycle, because the settling and vacuuming process bypasses the filter's normal capture mechanism entirely. But if cloudiness returns within days of a properly executed treatment on water that tested correctly beforehand, the filter itself deserves an honest inspection before you assume you did something wrong with the alum dose. 1A degraded filter cannot hold clarity even after the existing haze has been physically removed, since normal daily debris, pollen, and fine organic matter will simply begin accumulating again with nothing adequately catching it. This is worth stating plainly because it is exactly the kind of diagnosis that a pool store selling clarifier by the bottle has very little incentive to walk you through. A customer who replaces sand or a cartridge and stops needing repeat clarifier purchases is a customer who stops generating that particular repeat sale. An honest technician tells you this: 1A sales-driven interaction sells you another bottle instead. Running the numbers across a full swimming season makes the scale of the savings clearer than any single treatment does on its own. A moderately maintained residential pool typically needs this kind of clarifying treatment somewhere between 2 and 5 times across a normal season, depending on rain, bather load, and how quickly cloudiness gets addressed once it appears. 1 at pool store pricing for a proper strength flock or super clarifier product that is somewhere in the range of $60 to $175 across a season, purchased in small quart bottles at $20 to $35 each. Using plain alum and baking soda at grocery store or garden supply pricing, the same number of treatments runs closer to $10 to $25 for the entire season, including the alkalinity corrections needed to make each treatment work properly. 1. That gap, repeated across years of pool ownership, adds up to a meaningful amount of money spent on a container and a label rather than on chemistry that could not have been purchased anywhere else. It is the same pattern this channel has walked through with chlorine, with alkalinity increaser, with pH adjusters, a commodity compound, repackaged, relabeled for a specific application, and sold at a price that reflects the specialty shelf it sits on rather than the actual cost of what is inside the bottle. 1. If you have already used alum or a similar coagulant on your own pool, or if this is the first time you're hearing that cloudy water is usually a particle size problem rather than a chlorine problem, drop it in the comments. What did the water look like before? And how long did it take to clear once you tried it? Helping the next hazy pool owner understand this before they buy their third bottle of specialty clarifier is exactly what this channel is for. Every video here works the same way. Real ratios, no sponsors, no pool store upsell. If that is useful to you, subscribe. 1. This channel reads the water, not the marketing.